Welcome to my channel where we talk about all things real estate, leadership, and business ownership. No BS, no promos, no sales, just education. If you're ready to take control of your financial future and build real wealth, follow along. What I've learned in business and in real estate is that a lot of investors and business owners don't understand the difference between capital expenditures and operating expenses. And both play a really, really big part into each other. So let me talk to you a little bit about capital expenditures and how I budget for those, and then how they play a significant part in operating expenses, and then how that determines how you can drive value in the overall net operating income. So first of all, capital expenditures. When I go tour a property, I toured 3 yesterday, and I need to now underwrite. The first thing that I want to do is understand how much capital expenditures am I going to have to invest in that property to reposition that property, or in other words, to run the business the most efficient and effective way possible. And then I allocate a percentage of how much am I going to have to spend ongoing after I get the business to where I want. And when I say business, I'm talking real estate too. So I think there's the 2 ways to look at capital expenditures. Ongoing capex that you know you're going to have to spend even after you get the business to the right spot, and the amount of capital improvements that you need to make to get the business where you want. So let's talk about the first. So when I walk an apartment, and by the way, I've already looked at the P&L, and you should too. So now you're there in person, you're looking at and you're assessing all the things that you would need to change or do to be able to drive the business forward. So let me give you an example. Yesterday I walked an apartment complex, and the basement's underground parking were hideous. It was super dark, nothing was numbered, there was shit all over the place, right? Garage door barely opened. So underground parking in Wisconsin provides a lot of additional income. Clearly the person that's running it now is not taking advantage of that additional income. It's no wonder that nobody is renting that out, because you can't even see down there. All the spots are being utilized. The garage door barely opens. So what I would do is I would assess how much would it cost to light it up, to power wash it, to put in a number system, to make sure the garage door opens seamlessly, right? What are those things? And let's just say the cost is $50,000 to do all the underground parking. That is a capital improvement, right, that you have to spend to be able to then change the business. What I also like to do is, if I did or I spent that amount of money, how much income am I going to make from it? So easy math, you could say in a course of a year, if I can change that business, I am going to make $20,000. Okay, so you spend 50, you make 20. So easy math, right? You take the $20,000 a year that you're making divided by the 50,000. So I think it's really, really important to think through how you're changing the business, because if it would cost me, let's just say $100,000 to upgrade the underground parking, maybe there's structural damage, it could be even more, and I was only going to get $1,500 a year, maybe there's only like 4 parking spaces down here. Does that make a lot of sense? In this case, maybe you just shut off the bottom of the basement and you don't allow anyone back there and you don't spend any money on it, right? Maybe the capex to change that business to make sure your apartment doesn't look like crap or nobody sees it down there is only a couple $1,000s. But these are the kind of things that you need to assess. One of the biggest ones, guys, for me is the rehab of units, how you do renovations, okay? So for us, when we look at it, it's the same thing. Where are rents and what does the city demand? What do the residents want? It's not a feeling, it's where your renters are looking, right? How many people want a really, really nice unit and will pay X dollars for it versus a medium type of unit, or maybe it's more blue collar, hard working. They don't care that you have brand new cabinets and stainless steel. They just want a nice, well-run apartment, and they want it at a great price. These things matter. So when you're planning out capital improvements and budgets, you also have to know the income that's going to come in and where that business lies, right? Knowing your target market is important. Once you establish how much income you can drive, then you can establish the budget for the renovations. So renovations can range anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000 a unit to as little as $2,500, right? Maybe you just need to paint the unit. Maybe you just need to do paint, trim, and flooring. It really transforms a unit, but also allows you to keep it at an economical rate if that's what your budget demands. So this is an example of when you do the inspection, when you underwrite the deal, when you've walked the deal, you're going to come up with a list of these items. These items, these capital expenditures, are things that you are now going to spend on the business, which is going to increase the overall income. It's going to increase your ROI. Then the second thing you need to do with capital improvements, let's just say you walked and 7 of the roofs need to be done in the next 10 years. That is ongoing capital improvements that you just have to do. It doesn't change the business, right? Like tenants don't really care if the roof is new or not new. They just care that it's not leaking. So unfortunately in real estate, you got to plan for that. So typically one thing that I do is I like to set aside at least 2% into reserves, and that's something that you should do too. Now it all depends on the likelihood of these things like coming up. If I had 7 roofs that needed to be done in 2 years, you're going to want to set aside more money for those. And it's actually pretty easy, right? Like even if you're not sure how much a roof costs, you can get a free quote from just about anybody on how much it will cost. And then you can make sure you're setting aside that money. If really nothing needs to be done for at least a decade, you're still setting aside about 2% of your income because you know that a furnace is going to go out, right? You know that a roof is going to need to be done. You know that eventually you're going to have to replace those windows or maybe upgrade that siding. So you want to make sure that you allocate a certain percentage of your gross rents and you keep that aside for capital improvements. I've been doing that since day one, and it has worked really, really well because every time we need something, I already have the money set aside. It's not a surprise. I'm not like, oh shit, what do I do? Where do I get the money? Like being very organized with capital expenditures is important. Now, the other side of budgeting that I want to talk to you about is the operating expenses. I love to spend money on my apartments because not only does it provide a place I can be proud of and that residents appreciate, but picture this. Picture the landlord that does not spend any money rehabbing his units. A resident moves out, he like kind of cleans the carpet, the appliances are 15 years old, the toilets are 25 years old, the bathtub is 50 years old. These are typical things that I run into. Do you think that landlord will have more maintenance and repairs per month, more leaky toilets, more appliances that go out than me if I did upgrade that bathroom, if I did upgrade the appliances, if I did rehab the unit? Yes. And one of the things in real estate, guys, it is operating income minus operating expenses. That determines the value, your monthly expenses. It has nothing to do with capital improvements. Capital improvements drive the business or enhance the business. So when you renovate a unit, you do a complete unit renovation, that does not drop into your operating expenses, okay? That actually can lower your operating expenses based on the example that I just gave you, right? It should, when I'm finished renovating an apartment, and we don't just do things like rehabbing it look beautiful. We also put in low flow toilets, right? Different shower heads that work really, really well, but don't use as much water. So we're able to make the unit and the property and the business more efficient, lowering operating expenses, and at the same time, making that unit look beautiful. So we're actually increasing the operating income. So then overall, the profit is higher. If your profit is higher, your NOI is higher, your business is worth more. It's pretty easy, right? Would you rather pay somebody that has a business that produces $1,000 a month of profit or somebody that has $200, $1,000, right? And most likely that's because they stuck the money into the business or they repositioned it or they found something within the business that produced more profit and consistent profit. So it's more than just maintenance and expenses though. Like a big line item for a lot of apartments is utilities. Like I said, you can really reduce the utilities as well too. I think another good example would be snow, trash, grass, right? How do you make your apartment pop or your business pop, but also do it the most efficient way possible? That could be trash, renegotiating a really big contract or switching to a different company that has a more economical monthly expense. It could be lawn that you get to the right spot so it doesn't take as much to maintain. Could give you the right snow vendor that does a good job, which is not easy to find in Wisconsin, but also comes with a great price. So maybe you give them all of your apartments, or maybe you give them the ones that you want, or maybe you promise them more business. There's a lot of ways to be able to reduce that too. I know a big one right now is insurance. There is a lot of people talking about insurance costs going up, and they are, and going up, going up, going up, going up. Well, I'll tell you, my insurance companies that I work with, one of the things that they love that absolutely helps me lower the cost is that would the insurance cost more if I am an operator that never sticks any money into the property? And the answer is yes. But if I have a reputation of going above and beyond and upgrading my apartments, putting in good residents, running it very well, does that lower their risk? And therefore, if I can prove that, does that give me a case to then lower my insurance? I've done that over and over and over again. My insurance is almost always lower than the next operator because I've proven that I'm going to take an apartment that doesn't have very many upgrades, and I'm going to upgrade a lot, which is really going to reduce the liability that an insurance company could have. And then the way I operate the property through my business will also can help reduce that. So those are things that can just absolutely lower your overall operating expenses, and at the same time, they increase your overall operating income. But I really want to share that because, again, there's confusion. Like I met with an investor, a lot of investors actually, where they'll drop their capital expenditures budget into their overall expense budget. Guys, you can't do that. It's two completely separate budgets. If you redo all the windows, right, that is not an operational expense. That's a capital improvement. That is an expense that should be capitalized differently for taxes too, by the way, and it should not affect your bottom line. So maybe for a month you have a negative cash flow because you rehab 10 units or you put in $100,000 worth of windows. That cost or those things you do is separate line item than your operational expenses. So even when you have all those capex dropping in the month, it might look like overall you have a negative 30,000 or whatever it might be for the month. You actually have to remove the capex, right? And that's why the only operational expense that I continue to put in there is that 2% that I'm swiping for ongoing capex. If you have any questions about how to do this, how to budget, drop them in the comments. But the biggest thing that I'd implore you to take away from this video today is that when you're considering budgeting on overall expenses for your property, you have to separate capital improvements from operating expenses. And then when you go through capex, there's two kinds. One, a capex that has a shelf life. It's the capex that you're going to put to change the business plan to yours. And then it's the ongoing capex that every single real estate property is going to need. Those are two different distinct things. One, you have a plan and you execute that over a period of time. The other one, you're always executing forever for as long as you hold the property. Both of which should not affect your operating expenses.